to ADEX Pizza Virtual Expo, especially today with our celebration on World Children's Day together with Blue Hope. So today, this session that we're going to be focusing on, it's titled Plastic Pollution, Contributing to Climate Change. And please allow me to introduce the moderator, Mr. Paul Rose. And Paul is actually an expedition leader for National Geographic and also Pristine Seas. So herewith, without any further ado, let me pass the baton over to Paul. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nora, and good day, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on such a powerful day. You know, it is World Children's Day. We are talking about climate change. We're putting it together with the common denominator of plastics and technology and opportunity, all within the framework of a global pandemic. So this pandemic has arrived with no doubt, and that it's been caused by our out of balance relationship with nature. And we all know, thank heavens, and my fingers are still crossed, that we'll soon have a vaccine that comes from science. But equally, it's terrific to realize, I suppose, that the only long-term vaccine is to reset our relationship with nature. And I'm celebrating, and if it wasn't such a serious case, I would have some champagne out right now these days when I see the press and all of the good reporting saying that we need to protect what we have. We need to restore what's been damaged and reset our values so it doesn't happen again in the future. So really, you know, for those of us that work in the science field and at the front line of science discoveries, we should be celebrating this moment, because awareness on the value of our science has never been any better. So this is a terrific opportunity to reset our values and have a more sort of nature first economy and education system, dare I say it. They've got some great progress. We'll be hearing from Mura and some terrific technological progresses that are happening. We've got awareness levels at a world, all-time high. I doubt I've ever seen the awareness of plastic being quite so high. And we've got partnerships and organizations joining up to meaningful organizations that really do feel like action. The days of greenwash and blue wash seem to be well behind us, and we're now in a period of great action. So it's celebratory times with a lot of opportunity. And the way to make the best of the opportunity is to get together in international conferences, meet people, and be convinced, great, I've met you, thanks very much. We shake hands and it feels like action. And I miss those waypoints desperately. I used to love that, don't we all? Traveling, meeting people, and I use them as sort of like waypoints on the route, or lighthouses for direction, and see where the current challenges are, and of course celebrate a sense of success and share that with everybody else. So I do miss them desperately, but we're all getting better at these virtual conferences, thank heavens. And this one is a really high standard. We've got a terrific team to take us on a good direction. So it gives me great pleasure to start with Ken. You can't go wrong starting with Ken. Ken O'Flaherty is the COP26 Regional Ambassador for Asia Pacific and South Asia. And he'll explain how plastic pollution and plastic production contribute to climate change. So Ken, the floor is yours. It's a real pleasure to introduce you. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be joining this webinar today on a subject that's a strong priority for the UK government. You may know that leaders from around the world will be meeting in Glasgow next year at COP26 to deliver greater action on climate change. And we are clear that action on plastic pollution is an essential part of these global efforts. Almost all plastic that we consume is derived from fossil fuels, mostly oil and gas. And the process of extracting and transporting these fossil fuels and then manufacturing the plastic creates billions of tons of greenhouse gases. Today, around 4 to 8% of annual global oil consumption is associated with plastics. And if our reliance on plastic persists, it's estimated that plastics will account for 20% of oil consumption by 2050. Simply switching to bio-based plastics can't be the entire solution, unfortunately, because bio-based plastics can also have a very high carbon cost due to changes in land use to grow crops for their feedstock and the water consumption of those plants. Globally, in this year alone, researchers estimate that the production and incineration of plastic will pump more than 850 million tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. If that's continued unchecked, then plastic production is expected to triple by 2050, and corresponding emissions would rise to 2.8 billion tons every year. Currently, less than 10% of the plastic that we produce and use is recycled. Instead, 90% is disposed of in landfills or is incinerated, which of course emits even more greenhouse gases. More than 8 million tons of discarded plastic enters our oceans every year, with plastic now being found in the deepest place on Earth, in the Mariana Trench, nearly 11 kilometers below sea level. Our ocean provides the largest natural carbon sink for greenhouse gases, but the marine litter in our oceans is creating a deadly legacy. As the plastic begins to break down, sunlight and heat cause the plastic to release more powerful greenhouse gases, and our climate changes and the planet gets hotter, the plastic is breaking down even more quickly into more methane and ethylene, which increases the rate of climate change and so perpetuates a vicious cycle. The smaller plastic particles, known as microplastics, break off and disperse in the ocean and are unwittingly ingested by marine animals, fish, and plankton. Plankton plays a crucial role in taking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and water and sequestering it in deep ocean sinks. The full research is still to be completed, but the essential premise is that when microplastics threaten plankton populations, more carbon will re-enter the waters and atmosphere. Given that our oceans have successfully absorbed 30 to 50% of atmospheric carbon produced since the start of the industrial era, it's easy to see what's at stake. The UK recognises that marine litter and plastic pollution is one of the greatest environmental challenges facing the world today. We're committed to leading efforts to protect the marine environment, including as part of our COP26 presidency. The issue of marine litter cannot be solved by one country alone, and the discharge of litter into the ocean is only set to increase. That's why the UK believes it's time to start negotiations on a new global agreement to coordinate global action on marine plastic litter and microplastics. A new global agreement would build on the important work we're already doing on marine litter and would support our commitments to eliminate plastic entering the ocean. To tackle marine pollution at its source, we need a sustainable, international, and transboundary approach that will prevent and divert material from becoming a source of litter. Central to that will be reducing international reliance on plastics, increasing recycling of materials, supporting effective waste management, and promoting maritime practices that prevent harmful materials from entering the ocean in the first place. As a world leader in tackling plastic, the UK has committed to ambitious targets. We are working towards all plastic packaging placed in the market being recyclable, reusable, or compostable by 2025. Our landmark resources and waste strategy set out our plans to eliminate avoidable plastic waste over the lifetime of the 25-year plan. We want to lead by example by committing to remove all consumer single-use plastics from central government office estate by the end of 2020. Delivering on these targets will require strong action across UK government and our society, and we're clear that coordination with international partners is also essential. We are part of global initiatives such as the Commonwealth Clean Ocean Alliance, or CCOA, the Global Ghost Gear Initiative, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's New Plastics Economy Global Commitment, amongst many others. We have committed up to £70 million to tackle plastic pollution entering our oceans. That includes boosting global research, supporting developing countries to address CCOA ambitions, testing and finding alternative ways in which plastics can be reduced, reused or recycled, and making efforts to transition to more sustainable forms of manufacturing. We also support the UK Plastics Pact. The Pact encompasses 85% of the UK plastic packaging market, including members from across the supply chain, that have committed to 4 key targets by 2025 to reduce the amount of plastic waste generated. We have also made significant progress on eliminating avoidable plastic waste by introducing one of the world's toughest bans on microbeads in rinse-off personal care products. We've significantly reduced the sale of single-use carrier bags by the main supermarket retailers by 95% with our 50p charge on each bag, and we're extending the charge to all retailers and increasing the charge to at least 10p next year. We also introduced a restriction on the supply of plastic straws, cotton buds and stirrers from the 1st of October this year. Due to the success of the carrier bag charge, we're seeking a new power in our Environment Bill to be able to place charges on other single-use plastic items to encourage businesses and citizens to make a shift towards more reusable products. We will also introduce a new world-leading tax on plastic packaging, which will apply to businesses producing or importing plastic packaging which doesn't meet a minimal threshold of at least 30% recycled content. Subject to further consultation, this should take effect from April 2022, and we expect it to encourage more use of recycled plastic and to drive up recycling rates. UK industry is supporting all of these moves and is working in partnership with the UK government. Industry is investing £150 million towards the development of smart, sustainable plastic packaging. Our aim is for the UK to be a world leader in sustainable packaging for consumer products. But we know that we can go further. We want to introduce a deposit return scheme for drinks containers from 2023. And we're looking at the development of standards or certification criteria for bio-based, biodegradable and compostable plastics to better understand their effects on the environment and our current waste system. And we've committed to reviewing our regulatory framework covering waste exports to ensure we improve the quality of exports and ensure exports are recycled at sites operating to equivalent standards to those required in the UK. Now, we know that community groups are also keen to play their part in eliminating plastics pollution. We've made it easier for divers to collect and remove marine litter by removing the requirement to have a marine license. That exemption, of course, doesn't apply to any activity that's likely to cause damage to features of archaeological or historic interest, or which would have a significant impact on a marine protected area. I'm also very proud that the UK is, of course, a world leader in the area of research and innovation, and we want to ensure that we use those strengths in our fight against plastics pollution. The government's put together a package of over £100 million for research and innovation to tackle the issues that arise from plastic waste, and this is already funding new solutions in areas such as plastics recycling. Next year, British recycling company Renew ELP will start building the world's first commercial-scale plastic recycling plant in Wilton in the UK. It will use supercritical water, heat and pressure to convert all types of waste plastic, including those previously considered unrecyclable, back into the valuable chemicals and oils from which they were made. Those can then be used in the petrochemical industry in the production of new plastic and other materials, which will help us create a waste plastic circular economy. When it's completed, it will recycle around 800,000 tonnes of waste plastic every year. So I hope that gives you some idea of the determination of the UK government to tackle marine litter and plastics pollution. And I'd now invite you to listen to our Prime Minister Boris Johnson's video message published on Twitter on Friday the 13th of November. Thank you.
We're in danger of killing our seas. We're warming them up, though we're making them more acidic, and every day we're filling them with thousands of tons of turtle-choking, dolphin-poisoning plastic that is turning our oceans into vast floating rubbish dumps. That's why I'm delighted that the United Kingdom has now protected more than 4.3 million square kilometres of the world's ocean. That's an area equivalent to the size of India and 17 times the size of the UK. The British Overseas Territory of Tristan da Cunha, the world's most remote human settlement, has got us over the target, announcing a new marine protection zone this week to close more than 90% of its waters to harmful human activity. We can be proud of the leading role the UK is playing, but we need collective global action now if we're to save species such as the blue whale and the hawksbill sea turtle for future generations. I'm calling on other nations to join us in our ambition to protect 30% of the world's ocean by 2030. This is alongside the commitment which I announced at the UN General Assembly this year to protect 30% of the UK's land by 2030. Next year, Britain, along with our partner Italy, hosts the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow. We have a real chance to push for urgent action on climate change, to protect our planet and all its fantastic biodiversity on land and sea. We must make this a reality if we are to bequeath a world that is every bit as wonderful and magnificent as the one we inherited.
Ken, thank you very much for that excellent presentation and introduction of the Prime Minister's speech. You can imagine I was particularly happy with that speech because I led the Tristan da Cunha expedition, our Pristine Seas expedition. And once it got signed in, it was another great, dare I say it, sort of champagne moment on Friday, Ken, where we all celebrated that with our Tristanian friends. So, yeah, thanks very much for setting the scene from the UK's perspective and with the inspirational video. Excellent stuff. Well, now I'm introducing Joanne, and I'm introducing people who I've only just met. So it's always a pleasure, really. Joanne Green is Senior Associate of Tier Fund, and I've just looked at Tier Fund's work and your work, Joanne, and it looks great. And this is a perfect moment. You know, your report on the burning question, I think, couldn't be better at this time. So over to you, Joanne. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm just going to share my screen. And there we go. Great. So, yeah, I work for Tier Fund. Tier Fund is the Christian Relief and Development Agency. We're based in the UK. Our head office is in the UK, but we work in 50 countries around the world, and we work with local churches and church-based partners to support them in their local communities to help those people to realise their potential, and also to tackle the underlying causes of poverty as well through influencing global decision makers. And in the last few years, Tier Fund has been focused on the issue of mismanaged waste and plastic pollution. And we're seeing increasingly how communities in the global south are being affected by a huge increase in mismanaged waste and plastic pollution, and how that's affecting their health, and also how that's affecting climate change as well. And of course, we know that climate change is already, and the climate crisis is already hitting people in poverty the hardest. So I'm going to very briefly just talk firstly about the health impacts, because I think many people don't really know about how this is affecting people in poverty's health, and then I'm going to focus on the climate impacts. So last year, Tier Fund, when we launched a big campaign called the Rubbish Campaign, we launched a report called No Time to Waste, which really focused down on the health impacts on people in poverty of plastic pollution and mismanaged waste. And what we highlighted there, and what we found sort of estimated for the first time, was that up to 1 million people die each year because of the effects of mismanaged waste and plastic pollution. And the reason for that is that increasing amounts of waste and plastics are being produced in those countries and being sold there. But at the same time, there are no systems for collecting waste and dealing with it safely. And this means that people have no choice but to burn or dump their rubbish. And we know that this can end up in rivers, and that ends up in oceans. But also when waste and plastic is openly dumped, it attracts vermin, it attracts mosquitoes. It is also often set on fire. And here is a picture of Roida and her son, and they live in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And they live very close to a dump site, and every day, she's saying every couple of days, that dump site is on fire, and it's burning plastic and it's burning other waste. And the smoke is so dark and huge that you can't see the person in front of you or the house next to you. And that waste is full of toxins and dioxins, which people are breathing in. and affecting their health and particularly their lungs, and causing disease. And so that's something that we are really concerned about. And in that report, we also highlighted the role of companies, and particularly large, fast-moving consumer goods companies, in creating this plastic pollution crisis. We focus particularly looking and saying on the roles of PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Nestle and Unilever, who are 4 of the world's biggest plastic polluters. And we are saying actually that they have a leading responsibility to tackle this problem. Now, in March this year, we released a follow-up report called The Burning Question, which focused down on the impacts of plastic pollution, particularly on climate change. And we looked in this report at how the open burning of those 4 companies, plastic pollution that I just mentioned, in 6 countries impacts on climate change. Before I go into that in a bit more detail, as Ken has already mentioned, we know that the plastic, the production and the transportation and the extraction of plastic has a huge climate impact. And I won't repeat the statistics that he mentioned. But at the moment, there's no sort of, it's not really the impact of when that waste is openly burnt, so not incinerated, but just burnt in the open, has until recently not really been quantified. But building on academic analysis from Imperial College, which found that the open burning of mismanaged waste contributed between 2 to 10% of global greenhouse gases every year, we were able to estimate the contribution of 4 companies' plastic pollution, the open burning of their plastic pollution in 6 countries to climate change. And this is what we found. So first of all, we had to estimate in these 6 countries, which were the Philippines, India, Nigeria, Brazil, Mexico and China, we had to estimate how much of the plastic packaging that they are selling in those countries ends up as plastic pollution. And we estimated that in all of those countries, every 20 minutes, more than 1 football pitch of plastic pollution is created. And that what that means, that the contribution of that to climate change would be the equivalent of 2 million cars in the UK on the road, the open burning of that plastic pollution, which is a highly significant amount. We looked sort of quite specifically at the role of Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola produces a lot more plastic than any of the other companies. And we found, so at the moment, companies don't look at what happens, they don't look at the climate impact of what happens to the plastic packaging that they sell after they've sold it. So if you do include that and you look at the fact that a lot of this plastic packaging is being burnt in the global south, then emissions from the open burning of Coca-Cola's plastic are as much as 3/4 of their global transport and distribution emissions, which is huge. And obviously this isn't accounted for at the moment in companies' reporting of their greenhouse gas emissions, their contribution to greenhouse gas emissions. So what needs to be done about this issue? Well, there's a lot that needs to be done by lots of different stakeholders. But as I said, we've particularly focused on the role of large companies. And the reason for that is because we think they have a moral responsibility. They know that the plastic packaging that they are selling is ending up being openly burnt and also creating health problems and contributing to climate change. And they also have the capacity to do something about this. They are hugely wealthy, resourceful companies, and they have the ability to do something. And it's really important, firstly, that they are transparent about how much plastic packaging they are selling in each country. That's the first step. But secondly, and I think almost the most important thing, is for them to reduce the amount of plastic packaging and to set really ambitious targets for that reduction. We know that, the Pew report we've seen recently is saying we need to throw everything at this issue. We've got to reduce, we've got to recycle, we've got to do everything. But actually reduction is the most important thing. And the Ellen MacArthur global commitment progress report that was released recently emphasised the need for much more ambitious reduction targets. And we really want to see a shift to refillable and reusable containers as part of that. Thirdly, of course, we need to that rubbish needs to be collected, and we believe it is the responsibility of those companies to ensure that the rubbish that they are selling, the plastic packaging that they are selling that ends up as rubbish, is collected in low and middle income countries. And fourthly, we believe it's really important that as they set up those collection systems, they work in partnership with the informal waste sector around the world. Millions of the poorest people who are already picking up this plastic packaging, but doing so in very dangerous conditions and without a proper income. And we believe there's a huge win-win, that we can address the climate crisis, that we can address plastic pollution, and we can also create livelihoods for some of the world's poorest people. And yeah, this is what we're calling on companies to do. Some of them have taken actions and some are doing more than others, but still a lot more remains to be done. Thank you.
Wow, Joanna, thank you very much indeed. Joanne, rather, sorry. You can't go wrong with those human stories. This is what we need, isn't it? We you know, we are biophilic. We normally would be with people and see and feel that and experience that and walk across that burning rubbish and smell it and feel it from ourselves. But your report was great because it really brought it to life. And with a little bit of imagination, I can smell that burning rubbish even right now. So Joanne, please stand by for some questions as we move forward. Thank you very much. We now move to Malaysia, and I'm very excited about introducing our Malaysia panel. We have Tahira Banu Muhammad Arif from the Plastics Initiative, WWF Malaysia, and Professor Zachary Abdul Hamid. And it's excellent opportunity to introduce you both. And in particular, I'm the ambassador for the UN Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm Conventions. And it was last May of 2019, which feels like a lifetime ago. Time slipping in this extraordinary period seems to be a bit of a problem. You think, oh yeah, I remember being in Geneva at the Triple COP, and I remember celebrating when the Basel Convention was signed in, the new amendments to the Basel Convention, that it was much harder to ship waste around the world illegally. And this was a real great moment for us. We did get it signed in, all 187 countries agreed it. And then, as I'm sure everybody listening knows, in January of this year, you turned around 42 containers of illegal plastic waste that came, embarrassingly enough, from here in the UK. Because now we've got something called prior informed consent, and a lot of operators were sending material to nations around the world, and they just sort of had to accept it. They would declare it as, say, PET, but when they opened up all the containers, it was something unrecyclable, or there was no plan for it anyway. But now it's been turned back, and I suppose there's nothing like punching where it hurts. So that really raised the awareness level here in the UK. So it's a great pleasure to introduce you both. We start with Tahira, and then Professor Zachary comes after, and then we'll have a discussion. So Tahira, over to you.
Hello everyone, my name is Tahira from WWF Malaysia. Today I would like to share about what WWF in Malaysia is doing, and the plastic pollution problem in Malaysia, and as well as what WWF Malaysia is doing here in Malaysia. Just to quickly introduce our program is called No Plastics in Nature by 2030. First of all, we always receive questions on why WWF as a wildlife conservation organization is working on plastics. So to answer that, why plastics work is relevant to WWF is because Every year we see around 11 million tons of plastics entering the ocean, and which 80% of this is originate from land-based sources due to lack of proper disposal and as well as waste management system. This in turn severely impacts the terrestrial and marine ecosystems and wildlife as we know. Just to briefly share, we all know that plastic pollution is a serious challenge to environment, economy, and as well as society. We have seen photos of marine life and getting entangled, ingesting plastics, and as well as habitat damage due to plastics and the hit to fisheries and as well as tourism industries. Just to share a quick fact on a recent study by WWF on average how much plastics we ingest on a daily basis, I would like to share a quick video. 5 grams of plastic a week, a credit card every week. Imagine that. So yeah, so let's jump to Malaysia and what's happening in Malaysia. In Malaysia, our study we found that Malaysia has one of the highest per capita plastic packaging consumption compared to our neighboring countries such as Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. And it is recorded at around approximately 17 kg per person. When it comes to plastic waste generation, the composition of plastic waste is the second highest generated waste in the overall household waste generated. If you can see the chart, and you can see plastic waste is recorded at approximately 13%. And if you can see diapers and similar products is recorded at 12%, which is also mainly consisted of plastic and mixed plastics. Okay, what are the challenges in plastic waste management in Malaysia? Waste generation generally is increasing with higher GDP in Malaysia, and recycling market in Malaysia is highly unregulated, and there is low recycling rate among households. Especially, we don't practice waste segregation or separate collection at this point. And there's inefficiency in waste facilities due to limitations in resources and manpower. So in WWF, we encourage weekly plastic crisis can be solved in our current linear economy into a circular economy. In addition to improving our current waste management system, we believe 3 key strategies such as to reduce unnecessary plastics, improving recovery, recycling and reuse, and as well as by shifting to sustainable sources for plastics will eliminate plastic pollution problem. Just to show comparison between the current linear economy, which is predominantly in Malaysia, and as well as to compare with circular economy. The current linear economy is predominantly driven by virgin plastic production, and plastics are designed primarily for single use and it's disposed. And our target is to have a circular model with more sustainable inputs, increased reuse and recycling, and as well as to improve the waste treatment system to eliminate leakage into the environment. Okay, to jump to what WWF is doing. In Malaysia, we are focusing mainly on business engagement and as well as policy. I won't go through this one by one, but let me quickly show you a video that WWF with other organizations, we are also supporting the call for a global treaty on plastic pollution. And let me quickly show you a video on that.
Our ecosystems are critical to our survival, yet every year an estimated 11 million metric tons of plastic enters our oceans. Despite growing efforts to stem the flow and create a more circular plastics economy, plastic pollution continues to grow through the gaps at an ever faster rate. A UN treaty on plastic pollution has the potential to address the problem at scale, and many countries are already calling for such a solution that closes the gaps, but works for businesses at the same time, with less regulatory complexity, a stable investment landscape, and simplified reporting, while at the same time benefiting the planet too, protecting our environment from plastic pollution. A global problem needs a global solution. A global agreement on plastic pollution can unlock a cleaner future for all.
Yes, this is one of our key activities in Malaysia for policy advocacy. Other than calling for a treaty on treaty for plastic pollution, we are also working on establishing a extended producer responsibility for Malaysia. Just to quickly introduce what PR is. It's a concept that aims to reduce environmental and public within management by extending the producer's responsibility for the product and packaging to the post-consumer stage of product's life cycle. So you all might be aware of what the benefits are, but just to quickly go through, we believe in Malaysia, in a current situation as in Malaysia, EPR is very important to reduce the overall packaging use and as well as to improve collection and recycling of packaging waste in Malaysia. And economically, it can provide a financial basis to large-scale collection, sorting, and as well as waste segregation in Malaysia. Other than this, we also have a regional WWF Regional Plastic Action Pact, our initiative with businesses. It's a voluntary business platform for businesses to take action on plastics. So we work with businesses, be it multinational companies or small and medium businesses, for them to take action and work on reducing their unnecessary plastics, increase recycling and recyclable content of plastics, and as well as recovery of plastic materials in their operations. Just to quickly introduce our latest tool that we developed called the Alternative Materials Tool. This tool is primarily to help businesses in the hotel, restaurants, and cafe sector to on managing their single-use plastics. This tool ranks the top 10 materials with the least environmental impact. In cases where, of course, WWF, we encourage for reduction and elimination of unnecessary plastics. But in case where single-use plastics is not available, then we encourage businesses to look at the trade-off, environmental trade-off of this product packaging they are using in businesses. And this tool is not every company is equipped with artists in the company or a solution. So we come up with a web so that everyday procurement managers or as well as anyone who can use this tool to evaluate in terms of making decisions on packaging. Just to quickly go through, this tool is based on LCA and as well as waste management systems in Malaysia. Other than this, we are working with various stakeholders, government as well as private stakeholders in Malaysia to advocate for better plastics management. And we worked with some of the stakeholders to come up with some publications, mainly in EPR for EPR scheme in Malaysia. And we also recently launched a sustainable retailer scorecard. We assess the retailers in Malaysia on their sustainability practices, which include packaging and plastic practices in their operations in Malaysia. These publications are available on our website as well. Thank you.
Fahira, that was excellent. Thank you so much indeed. I really enjoyed that. And as always, you know, we're speaking about Malaysia globally. It's quite the focus for plastic, rightly it should be. And of course, it's leadership from you and your team that we all look to. And I thought that was a great project because we had the global story, all of the technicalities and the partnerships and the need for action. I'm sure, like many people, starting with the business of we eat a credit card of plastic every day is a great one. That's what we need. I still remember the day when we read the science reports that we could actually prove that nanoplastic crossed the blood-brain barrier. And that was the moment we could prove that it was in us. Plastic was in us. And, you know, when it's in us, that has to be one of the ultimate motivators. So reminding us that we're eating about a credit card a day couldn't be better. We're going to have, I'll introduce Professor Zachary Abdul now and then hang on to here because we're going to have a discussion between us. So thank you very much for that excellent presentation. And now, Professor Zachary Abdul, Abdul Hamid, it's a real pleasure to introduce you, sir. And we're looking forward to your presentation on how the plastic pollution in Malaysia and it's linked to other environmental problems, including climate change. So the floor is yours, Professor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm very honored to be here to say a few points on plastic pollution in Malaysia and how it relates to climate change. I just was reminded, maybe we'll go back one more set, the third one. Yes, Paul, I just want to remind the audience that I'm very grateful that the UK is taking the initiative on this plastic pollution. Because if you look at the first bullet of this slide, it says that plastic has its humble beginnings in your country in 1856. So it's almost like going full circle, isn't it?
Exactly. And for us as a young boy, I was born in 1951, and plastic was this amazing miracle space age product. We loved it.
Exactly. And these are the three bullets that I have here, how plastic has been very good to our civilization, isn't it? Waterproof, inexpensive. It has replaced many things, wood, stone, and the others. Indeed, plastic is everywhere. It has been very good, but at the same time, it's a great cause for concern. The second slide. And here is where it affects climate change because it originates as fossil fuels and emit the greenhouse gases. And all through its life cycle, plastics have been quite bad to climate change, where it contributes to higher temperature eventually. Fourth slide. So the problem with plastic, I think this had been highlighted by Ken earlier and the other speakers, how plastic end up in our ocean, the very famous analogy here, an estimated 12 million tons every year. That's the equivalent of a full rubbish truck every minute. Is kind of intriguing, isn't it? All the rest here have been mentioned by our speakers. I don't need to dwell on that. Let me move on to the next slide. And these are some figures from Earth Day Network, on the largest group working on this, how about 9 billion tons of plastic has been produced to date, generated about 7 billion tons of plastic waste, and how, as we kept saying, only 9% has been recycled, and is expected to go to be amplified in years to come. Next slide. These are just some of the thrusts of the EDN's campaign, that we need to reach out to the grassroots, of course. We need to educate the citizens. We need to educate people worldwide to take personal responsibility, and of course, encouraging government, in particular local government, to act on plastic pollution. And as Tahira also mentioned, Paul, the plastic problem in Malaysia is, to say the least, embarrassing, because Malaysians are Asia's biggest plastic consumers, and we contributed a lot also to the problem in the region. And here are some of the figures. It's also well known, you know, how if we don't watch out, the sea could contain more plastic by weight than fish by mid-century. And again, in Malaysia, Malaysia's carbon emission associated with plastic from production to burning is very high in 2019, greater than the annual emissions of Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines combined. So there you are. One of the reasons for that, people were saying Malaysians consume the most plastic because it's more readily available to us. These range from food delivery, packaging, and day-to-day products bought in a supermarket. So in other words, all those factors created a perfect storm for waste leaking into the surrounding seas. And it has great negative implication, of course, hurting tourism, fishing, shipping, and plastic waste kill marine life and other human food chain. So we need to introduce regulation to limit single-use plastic. That has been in the minds of many people, many governments. How that would pan out remains to be seen. And as mentioned also by other speakers, we need to work with businesses and green groups to introduce a better system of managing these consumer goods. The other problem about Malaysia's waste is it's often mixed and ends up in landfill, which can be washed into rivers and seas by extreme weather. So I think awareness campaign is so necessary to improve our understanding of the problem. The other point you also touch on, Paul, which is also embarrassing to me, when China banned plastic waste imports, the top exporters of countries in the US and Europe started to turn to other Asian countries. Is horrific, isn't it? It's an understatement. We import this plastic waste, you know. I thought the days of doing this is gone. I used to be involved in some of the UN treaties, and one of that is the Convention on Biological Diversity. In one clause, there was a mention, there was a debate that experiments on GMOs shouldn't be done. It should only be done in developing countries. That was many years ago. It never panned out, of course. But here you are looking at this waste from the rich countries being sent to the developing or less developed countries. I'm so happy that this thing is now being reviewed, and many of those are being turned back. It's a shame, actually, and all of us are responsible for it. Next. So what needs to be done? There is a need for legal, law-abiding plastic recycling companies to adhere to all this waste management and better understanding, really. So education is so essential. For Malaysia, actually, we are smarting to the problem, and one of the actions adopted by government is to have a roadmap towards single-use plastic, which we plan to have a cleaner and healthier environment by 2030. And the vision is to take a phased, evidence-based and holistic approach by involving all stakeholders in jointly addressing single-use plastic pollution in the country. This has gained some traction, but there are still challenges before us, which we can discuss worldwide. One is, of course, the lack of awareness, because the plastic have been so good, to society. So the lack of awareness got to be tackled. Low recycling rate is another problem, where there's a lot of focus on just things like the PET bottles, but other waste materials, food packaging, polystyrene products, and straws who do not have the recycling value are almost never recycled. Third one is, of course, the biodegradability and cost of current alternative to plastic, which is much higher in price than the plastic itself. Of course, other challenges include enforcement. That has always been a big problem in countries like Malaysia. Is not only due to the understanding, but the lack of resources, the lack of funds that the government should be putting so that rules and regulation could be properly enforced. And finally, of course, we need to see how plastic could be managed in an integrated manner, because it involves a lot of other issues too, like industries such as fertilizer, energy, and animal feed. But having said that, Paul, I'm very rejuvenated by the very recent statement by Malaysian youth. In fact, this is a news item released yesterday on World's Children's Day, and it says here 92% of young people in Malaysia think that climate change is a crisis. This is very good. So we talk about awareness. We are already seeing that in young people. So the hope for this country, of course, lies in this group of citizens. With that, let me once again thank you to the British High Commission for inviting me to this webinar, and I'm delighted and grateful to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Bravo, Professor Zachary. That was a very powerful presentation. And as humans, we tend to be lazy, don't we? We don't change unless we have to. If life continues pretty much comfortably or as we're used to, we're happy to roll along with things. But when things do reach a crisis point, that's when we really begin to see action. And I would expect that we're now at that stage in Malaysia where, with your great leadership and partnerships that you and Tahira are developing and have developed, it's really going to lead into some action. I'm a bit of an optimist, but when I see this kind of thing and I see the situation so difficult and so challenging and so visible, then I feel it's a good source for action. And I just very quickly went back to that story of Malaysia returning plastic to the UK because of the changes in the Basel Convention, which was a celebratory moment. And I just found this headline, which I'm sure you've seen many more times now, which says, Malaysia plastic pollution, we saved our town from your Western rubbish. So you can't go wrong with a headline like that. And of course, you know, I'm in Britain at the moment, so oh, well, that was painful. So when it's painful, we act. And of course, you know, you clearly described the situation there. So Tahira and Professor Felix, if I can ask you to hang on, because I've got some questions for you both. And we can have a few minutes discussion if that's okay with you both. Right. Well, the first question is, how do we legislate against plastic if it increases cost when public and businesses are already struggling because of the pandemic? And this has been one, thank you for the question. It's been one of my fears that as we emerge into the post-COVID world, that we have to make sure we don't panic and sell ourselves cheap in the rush to make the economy work. We must stick to our principles because this is such a great opportunity. So yeah, how do we legislate against plastic if it increases costs when businesses are already struggling? Tahira and Felix.
In WWF, yes, we understand that pandemic has put a pause or a stop to a lot of initiatives that's been undertaken by some of the businesses and as well as government in Malaysia. But we believe this pandemic has actually provided us with the opportunity to relook at the strategy, the sustainability initiatives, and process it. So, well, yes, cost is an issue, but I think if everyone can play their respective role together, collectively, and cost issues can be overcome.
Got it. And Professor Zachary.
Yes, I like that question, Paul. And let me help Tahira on that. You know, governments are very gung-ho and rightly so in focusing on stimulus packages that focus on life and livelihood. But, you know, when it comes to COVID, you would see it be less emphasis on that to include the impact of COVID-19 on the environment is very less emphasized. When we know very well that the root cause of this COVID-19 are destruction of the habitat in Wuhan to start with, I would argue that government should have a balanced approach, but normally they don't. It's the same with the plastic. We know the problem, we know the gravity of its impact in years to come. And since maybe it's not so visibly life-threatening, we tend to put it on the sidelines. But I think taking a leave from COVID-19, I think governments and in particular citizens must take a balanced and holistic approach because all eventually relates to our human survival. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. And another question come in. This is a good one again, of course. Thank you again for the question. It's the UK charges for plastic bags, and that has reduced the use by around about 90%. And it meant, I remember the day when it happened, and it wasn't long after where it became very sort of socially unacceptable to request plastic bags in the shops. You know, I remember the look on some of the, if I was in a desperate situation those early days and didn't have stuff and I was putting things in my pockets and there was nothing, I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to have a bag. I felt that I was trying to buy illegal drugs or something. It was like, you know, and the shop assistant was giving me a bag quite reluctantly. And it has become socially unacceptable now. And that's been quite the boost for us here in the UK and some other countries. And we just wonder what the situation is in Malaysia regarding banning or charging for plastic bags.
I think some of the states are implementing bans on plastic bags and and charges on plastic bags. That hasn't exactly resulted in the consumer change. for the 20s, it's charged 20 cents in Malaysian ringgit. People are paying for it and still consume the plastics. And in some cases, we can see that some countries have switched to normal plastics to bioplastics and biodegradables, which may not be the best solution for Malaysia, as we don't have proper waste facilities to process these plastics. So yes, banning is being considered and even announced in certain states, and is being planned for the whole country. But what are the alternatives? What are the incentives that's being provided for the consumers to bring their own bags? All this needs to be considered, and it needs a systematic approach rather than a single solution of banning immediately without proper alternatives.
Thank you, Tahira. And Professor Zachary, any comments on the plastic bags banning or charging?
Yes, I like this question also because I observe the consciousness of Malaysians in the big cities and towns are changing, and they have no problem in not having plastic bags. But I also want to venture out because Malaysia is quite a traditional country, and you know, in the smaller town and also the large one, wrappers, Paul, are from leaves like our favorite nasi lemak. The best wrappers are from the banana leaves, you know. So I wish in Malaysia or worldwide, we would get back to nature, you know. Nature-based solutions is the way forward. So on that count, I think we are encouraged by the level of consciousness in trying to reduce plastic use. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both. That was a great part of the session. I really did enjoy that, and I learned a lot. And I could tell I was enjoying it a lot because I took lots and lots of screen grabs. So I'll be in touch to you both later for some follow-ups. Thank you very much indeed, both of you. Well, now we go from Malaysia to the UK story, and to kick us off, before David joins us, we've got the video from Lord Zach Goldsmith, UK Minister of the Pacific and Environment. And this is the speech that he recorded on World Oceans Day, and it's very appropriate for today. So here we go. Thank you.
I want to thank you for inviting me to speak to you on World Oceans Day as we launch the Blue Hope campaign. I hope that you and your families are safe and well. In these very difficult times, it is reassuring to see so much energy being focused on addressing the threats facing our global ocean. From individuals to businesses to governments, we need to keep up the pace. And the evidence is very clear. Marine ecosystems face huge pressures from human activity. 1/3 of marine mammals are threatened with extinction. Nearly 90% of the world's marine fish stocks are now fully exploited, overexploited, or depleted. Half of the world's coastal waters have been degraded. And when it comes to plastic, we face a stomach-churning challenge. We've seen massive coverage on plastic pollution affecting every single part of our ocean, right the way down to the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of our ocean. 100,000 mammals and 1 million birds die every year from eating or getting tangled in ocean plastic. Millions of tons of plastic still enters the marine environment every single year. And if we do nothing, the amount of plastic in our ocean is set to treble by 2025. Now, I don't think there's any question that people around the world want this problem to be solved, but it requires a massive escalation of effort on all of our parts. This Blue Hope campaign will raise awareness on the scourge of ocean plastic pollution and the damage it causes to marine and biodiversity, and it will encourage action to tackle it. Now, in the UK, we are getting our own house in order. We're putting the emphasis on making products that last and can be repaired or recycled. We want to design waste right out of the system. We've taken practical steps to eliminate what we don't need, from one of the world's toughest bans on microbeads and restrictions on the supply of plastic straws, buds and stirrers coming into force this October. Our 5p charge for plastic bags has seen 90% fewer bags sold by the main retailers, meaning fewer plastic bags on the beaches and the seafloor. And we've consulted on plans to extend those charges and will publish our response very soon. But we cannot tackle global ocean plastic pollution alone. And we want to help other countries leapfrog the mistakes that the developed nations have made in the past. Since 2018, we've committed up to £70 million to tackling plastic waste, working alongside friends like Rwanda and Samoa in the Commonwealth Clean Ocean Alliance. 34 out of 54 Commonwealth nations are committed to reducing ocean plastic pollution to help meet the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 14, Life Below Water. And I'm absolutely delighted that in recent weeks, this alliance has grown by 3 new members, the Maldives, Nigeria, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're funding global research and stopping plastic from entering the ocean in the first place too. Encouraging recycling in the textile industry, supporting circular economies worldwide, and developing marine litter action plans through our Commonwealth Litter Programme. And we're supporting 165,000 young people through the UN Environment's Tide Turners Plastic Challenge badge, a West African hit gone global, inspiring a new generation of leaders to tackle plastics with their communities. And it's shocking that 2 billion people currently have no access to waste collection service. So we're working closely with the World Economic Forum to support the Global Plastic Action Partnership, mobilizing investment to avert plastic pollution from source to sea by 2025 by fast-tracking circular economy solutions. National plastic action partnerships have already launched in Ghana and in Indonesia. Sea-based sources of plastic pollution matter too. Ghost fishing gear can account for around 40 to 70% of marine litter by weight. So we're supporting communities around the world to take steps to prevent it being lost, abandoned, or discarded through the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. Working at scale brings results, and we cannot tackle climate change, help nature recover, or help the world's poorest people build sustainable, resilient livelihoods without supporting the health of our ocean. So as custodians of the 5th biggest marine estate in the world, we are leading the charge in protecting the ocean. We have protected an area almost twice the size of England around the UK, and we will do more. Our Blue Belt programme of marine protected areas around the overseas territories is on track to protect an area of ocean the size of India, from the biodiversity jewel of Ascension Island to the subantarctic wilderness of South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. We are backing mangrove restoration projects, helping vulnerable coastal communities in Madagascar, Indonesia, Latin America, and the Caribbean restore mangrove forests, protecting people from storm surges, storing carbon, and supporting fisheries. And a new £500 million investment in a new Blue Planet Fund will help countries protect marine resources from key anthropogenic threats like climate change, plastic pollution, and overfishing. But we share one global ocean, and we need a whole Earth effort. So I'm delighted that the UK Prime Minister has chosen to put nature at the heart of the UN Climate Change COP26, which the UK, in partnership with Italy, will host in Glasgow next year. We're working very closely with the Chinese, who will be hosting its biodiversity-focused sister CBD conference in Kunming. And I was thrilled that at the UN last year, our Prime Minister launched the Global Ocean Alliance in support of a new CBD target to protect at least 30% of the global ocean by 2030, including an ambitious outcome from the UN BBNJ agreement to establish an effective mechanism for designating marine protected areas in the high seas. The Global Ocean Alliance has continued to grow, and on World Ocean Day, I am so pleased to announce 7 new joiners today, taking the total to 20 countries. We all depend on our ocean, and we have a duty to act now on behalf of every generation who will also rely on a healthy ocean. So let us build on this positive start using Blue Hope to keep the dialogue flowing so we can roll out solutions for the long-term health of the ocean that we all share.
Great stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed that on World Oceans Day, and it seems very appropriate to bring it in today. And as the man who led the Tristan da Cunha expedition, I just want to add that if we'd had that already signed in, he would have mentioned that too. So another chance to celebrate World Ocean leadership from the world's most remote, permanently habited community, the Great Tristanians. So now, continuing the UK theme, we're joined by David Rogers. And David, I haven't met you before, but I'm really pleased to meet you today. David is the head of International Resource Management, RAP. And he's going to speak about setting up a plastic circular economy, steps that business, consumers, and governments need to take and need to work together. So David, thank you very much for joining us today, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thanks to everyone for attending. I'll just share my screen. There we go. So RAP is a charity in the UK which has worked for the last 20 years on taking waste out of landfill and putting it back into the economy in a useful format. We've recently been taking that knowledge and expertise around the world to help countries tackle the problem of plastic pollution and plastic waste. Now, we hear a lot about a circular economy, moving away from a linear economy. There's a lot of reports and information out there, but RAP's experience over the last 20 years is of taking those big ideas and turning them into practical delivery, real changes on the ground that you and I, as day-to-day people, can see and feel and interact with, that make long-term real changes to the way people live. And we were involved heavily in the plastic bag charge and the reduction of plastic bags in the UK as an example of that. So what I wanted to do today was just talk about what can you do if you work for a government, if you're just a citizen at home, if you're a child at school, what can we all do to make this big idea of a circular economy actually happen? So first of all, I think it's worth just having a look at what do we really mean by a circular economy? What are some of the practical things that this looks like in the day-to-day world? Well, it's all about making sure that the things that we put out into the world and we all use every day are actually able to go round and round in a circle instead of being made, used, and then just thrown away to either rot in landfill or be burnt in an incinerator, which we've heard from previous speakers is not good for the environment. So how can we actually make this happen? Well, for those people involved in making products, can they make them better so that as they're designed at the beginning of their life, we're already thinking about what happens to them after they're being used? So there's an example there of a milk bottle. It used to be that those milk bottles were made and they couldn't really be recycled for a number of reasons. And so after being used, and we use a lot of these in the UK, after being used, they would just be sent to landfill where they're still sitting, slowly rotting over many hundreds of years. We worked with the dairy industry and the packaging providers that supply them to change the way that those bottles are made so that they could be recycled at the end of their life, and that they could even use material that came from the recycling of old milk bottles back into new ones. So that nowadays, the average milk bottle or plastic milk carton put on the market in the UK contains 50% recycled plastic. That just helps that material go round and round the cycle. And there are all sorts of things you'll see in your day-to-day lives. Drinks bottles that have a very shiny, exciting-looking film wrap around the outside advertising the brand. That makes it very hard to recycle that product. So we work with businesses to reduce the size of that label and change what it's made of so that that bottle can go back into the market to be recycled. Of course, that's all great. We can put lots of very recyclable material onto the market, but it needs to be collected and then recycled. So that's where governments and local governments and the waste contractors, the bin men that we see day to day, they all have a role to play. Can we collect that material and send it to a good quality recycling plant where it can be turned into good quality recycled material to be used again? And obviously, people at home have a role to play in that, in understanding what material can go into what bin, and putting things, washing them out, making sure they're nice and clean, putting that into the recycling. But we would work with governments and local authorities, municipalities here, to make sure that material gets collected, and then work with the waste sector, the people who used to collect our rubbish and put it in landfill, encourage them to build high-tech, high-quality recycling plants that can take that material and turn it into something useful. And then once that product has been made into something that can be reused, we have to encourage people to actually use it. So breaking down barriers, such as using high-quality recycled plastic in food-grade packaging, something that RAT worked on about 20 years ago, which has now become commonplace. That provides a market for that material, which creates an economy which goes round and round. And that's how we get a circular economy in plastic, for this instance. Now, to make that happen, all of us have to play a role. Together, brands, retailers, manufacturers, producers, recyclers, charities, NGOs, citizens, governments, local authorities, we all have to take action. We all have to do something. So what can you do? Well, it depends where you fit, really. Government can make sure that regulation and legislation is in place which encourages recycling and circularity rather than cheap, easy disposal. It can inform citizens through the education system about the importance of this and behaviours that we need to all change in order to make it more possible to have a circular economy. And of course, it can show leadership, as we've just seen from the Prime Minister and Lord Goldsmith, in taking on the real big issues and showing that they are important and we will take action. Businesses have a huge role to play, and this is talking really here mainly about producers and retailers in designing products, like I just said, to make sure they could be reused or recycled at the end of their first life. Provide us with alternative ways of using their product. We've seen great things recently from some of the supermarkets and some of the big brands promoting reuse and refill stations so that we don't have to have a new plastic container every time we buy a product. And they can specify that there should be recycled plastic content in any of the new packaging that they purchase. And when you're as big as Coca-Cola or Unilever, you purchase a lot of packaging, and that has a lot of power. Citizens, us, people, day to day, young people, old people, everybody, we need to really take this seriously and understand what we need to do. Make sure that we have a reusable bottle if, you can't say that. Have a reusable bottle if you can, or if you can't, then make sure that the bottle or the tub or the tray that you've used goes into the right recycling bin. It's clean, it's ready to be recycled. And understand the changes you see. If you go to a supermarket and you suddenly can't get a plastic bag, or the product you're used to buying is now in a small reuse carton rather than a large bottle, understand that there's a reason for that. There's an environmental reason why we all need to accept some things may not be quite as convenient as we used to like, but actually for the sake of the planet, these things are really important. And make sure you change your behavior, whether you're at home or you're at work or you're out and about with your friends, socializing, doing sport, whatever. And waste management. Obviously, waste management companies are investing in high-tech sorting and reprocessing infrastructure, which means they can actually collect in all the waste that we generate and turn it into something high quality, which can go back into manufacturing. So we all have a role to play. And the really great news is that in the UK, where we've been running work on plastic for a number of years, including the UK Plastic Pact, which launched 2 years ago, we record and measure all of the changes that happen and the impact of those. And this slide is really just a snapshot of some of the amazing things that have been done by companies that you will recognise. Sprite putting recycling messages on their bottles. Coca-Cola putting recycling messages on their bottles. Sprite changing their bottle from green to white so it had a higher value and therefore could be collected and more economically recycled by the recycling industry. Evian, they're putting recycling messages. Highland Spring, a water company, making their plastic bottles out of 100% recycled content for the first time. Ecover doing the same. Tresemme, part of the Unilever group, changing the formulation of their products so that for the first time, the black plastic bottles that they produce could be detected by the infrared scanners in recycling plants and recycled. And Waitrose changing all of their non-recyclable black plastic ready meal trays for fully recyclable coloured ones. There's a lot happening, and it's really great to see that as citizens push for this from the brands and retailers that they love, the businesses are responding. The other thing we can do, working with governments and businesses, is explain about plastics. There's a lot of misinformation and confusion there. And we get asked a lot, why can't we just ban all plastic packaging? Well, at the moment, that's just not a practical reality. And actually, the impact on food waste would be really huge. And so we need to be sensible about the plastic that we're using, reduce it to the minimum, and make sure that what is out there can be used, kept in the economy, and recycled effectively. And why can't we just replace plastics with other materials? It's actually, sadly, not that straightforward. I saw a report coming out from Southampton University yesterday talking about the carbon impact of switching from plastic to glass bottles. This is something that RAP has looked at over the years. There are so many other things to consider. A glass bottle can be reused, but it has to be reused so many times in order to offset the additional carbon that producing it makes, that it isn't necessarily a practical solution in terms of climate change. So we're explaining this to businesses and to citizens. And the great thing about all of those actions and monitoring and recording the results of those is we can give people information like this to show that it can be done. It can be done. All of this stuff is so difficult, but it can actually be done. So in 1 year, working with the members of the UK Plastic Pact, we identified 1.1 billion items that would be removed from sale completely by the end of this year, 2020. That's 1.1 billion items of plastic that were completely unnecessary or will no longer be sold. I mentioned the recycling of the ready meal trays. We eat a lot of ready meals in the UK, which I find very distressing. But 1.5 billion ready meal trays that couldn't be recycled last year now can be. That's a huge change. And then before the pandemic, sadly, it's gone slightly backwards now, but before the pandemic, supermarkets had removed 3,400 tons of packaging from apples and cucumbers and salads and other fresh produce, which is the equivalent of taking 272 London buses worth of plastic out of the market. And the recycling sector invested £120 million in 450,000 tons of new recycling capacity in the UK to meet the demand for the recycled content to go back into new packaging that I talked about at the start of this. So that was a really short whistle-stop tour of the practical things that can happen. We can make a difference. These things are they're baked into the future business models of these businesses. This can happen all around the world. A plastic bottle in the UK is the same as one in Malaysia. And so we can, working together, have a huge impact. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you very much, David. I was so happy to hear you describe the circular economy and then come into the behavioural changes, because we work so hard on these behavioural changes everywhere and everybody. And also, you and all of us understand that a good motivator for issues like this is good news and signs of positive progress and successes. So thank you very much. And please stand by for questions at the end. It now gives me a lot of pleasure to introduce the Mura video, because technology, we need innovative technology as part of the solutions. And I'm very intrigued, excited and positive about the Mura technology. And thanks very much for running the video. Thank you.
I have been a witness to changes in the ocean since I first began exploring the ocean diving as a young scientist in the 1950s. At that time, there were more fish in the ocean than there are today, and there was no plastic.
I'm Jo Ruxton. I'm the co-founder of Plastic Oceans Foundation and producer of the Netflix documentary A Plastic Ocean. The one thing that I've discovered is the many threats to the ocean, and the one that none of us can ignore anymore is how much plastic is out there. We need to address our addiction that we have to single-use plastic. Mura Technology has developed catalytic hydrothermal reaction, or CAT-HTR. This method takes plastic and turns it back into oil.
We're excited because this technology is revolutionary. Today, only a minority of plastic waste can be recycled. The rest goes into the ocean or incineration or into landfill at great expense. Meanwhile, we have to dig fossil oil out of the ground to make new plastics.
The CAT-HTR process uses water at high pressure and high temperature to cause chemical transformations. The hot, pressurized water cut the plastics into small pieces like scissors. Catalysts cause these pieces to rearrange to form liquids like waxes, diesel or petrol, and gases like ethylene, which is a raw ingredient to make new plastics.
If we just think about what that's going to mean for communities, it'll create jobs for people because the plastic waste will be seen as a resource. We can set up local circular economies, and that means less pressure on the environment, no need for fracking in pristine environments. This method is absolutely going to change the way that we think about plastic.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been a really terrific session. And we've got just about 10 minutes now to have a discussion and do our very best at managing some questions and answers. I think we've done great justice to the issue because we've got the global picture all the way down to behavioural change. And there's a sense that we are doing our very best to make the best of this historic opportunity. As we've all been reminded, this pandemic was brought on by the destruction of habitat and our out of balance relationship with nature. And the fact that when we speak about plastic, when we now prove, and I think it was 4 years ago, you might correct me, but I think it was about 4 years ago when we did prove that nanoplastic does cross the blood-brain barrier. So therefore it is in us. And there was all that hormonal research and all kinds of studies on young ones as well that showed that it is in us. We've got the best motivation for doing the right thing. And, just to restate that we all now know, and the world knows, that our health is reliant on everybody else's health, which in turn is reliant on the health of nature. So there couldn't be a better motivator to do the right thing. And I just dearly hope that in the post-COVID world, we don't rush into a panic to restart our economies by selling ourselves cheap. So I think we've done great justice, and we've got about 10 minutes questions. So to anybody that wants to ask, here's the first one. Why don't the supermarkets organise the refill of products such as shampoo and fabric softener, etc.? Anybody?
I can answer that. Well, actually, they are starting to. So it's certainly in the UK, starting with Waitrose and then Asda, they rolled out quite wide programs of refills, but that has had to take a step back during the coronavirus crisis, unfortunately. I saw a presentation from Unilever yesterday where they showed some really impressive racks of refill machines to refill all of their products across a range of household and food products. And there are other projects happening. Coca-Cola's bought SodaStream, so refills, using small concentrates of Coca-Cola, which you then sort of add to with the SodaStream at home. So there are a lot of things happening it does require a big mental shift by shoppers as well, to be able to go prepared for putting your product into your own packaging, taking stuff with you to refill. There are lots of obviously independent refill and plastic-free shops that exist, and I use one myself. It does take a lot of discipline to have all the stuff ready for that. So yeah, we are working on it, and hopefully those models, because it's people like Coke and Unilever doing it, those will be rolled out around the world, and we'll start to see it more widely soon.
Thanks very much. I know from my short perspective with this, it's really been something in this COVID world. I've become a serial online shopper, and the supermarkets that deliver food, none of them deliver it in plastic bags. It's awesome. It just comes on a huge tray, and you just unload the tray at your front door. And then I notice also Amazon and other online shoppers very rarely pack with plastic. It's all paper. Yep. In fact, we received something last week that was in plastic, there's big, huge bubbles like bags full of air. And we were so disappointed. It was the first plastic packaging we'd seen for some time. So socially, we are getting somewhere. And there's a comment here that consumers want to shop plastic aware, but nevertheless, the choice isn't always available in the shops. And what does everyone think about these bags that are provided for life? Our local supermarket provides bags for life, and they are made of plastic and other products, but they're very heavy and they last for life. What does the panel think about this?
Yeah, well, I know in the UK, I think that the use of plastic in bags has actually increased because of those bags for life. So while the single-use plastic bags were kind of discouraged because of the amount that you had to pay, the bigger, thicker bags are actually meaning that we are reusable bags using up more plastic, which is not what we want to see. So I think it is about really people, that kind of change in consumer behaviour that is needed to, and also the incentives really and the signals that can be provided by government to encourage people to do that. And I think just on the question of retailers sort of making the space for refillable options, I think another really important thing is that actually customers don't have to bring their own containers. That actually the systems are set up. What we want to see is the retailers and the large fast-moving consumer goods company working together to actually set up the systems so that we will kind of maybe pay a deposit for a container, and then we will take it back and they will ensure that it is washed and cleaned. Because I really don't think it's realistic, apart from a very sort of hardcore of consumers, to expect them to be taking like hundreds of containers to their shopping. And I think on that, at the moment, I think Greenpeace have a really good campaign targeting retailers. And I think retailers do need to do a lot more to sort of give space to these refill and reuse kind of opportunities that are there. Not just in the global north, but also in the global south as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Joanne. I have a question for the panel. I've worked closely with Econil in Ljubljana, and they're the company that reprocess fishing nets. And it's really been something. This was part of a Zoological Society London project called Networks. Big circular economy project, David, where these beaches that were just middens and middens of nets and of course old recovered ghost fishing nets are now turned into highly desirable, beautiful, almost virgin grade nylon. And from that, they have got good contracts with people like Stella McCartney and Gucci. These highly desirable goods. So these products are beautiful, they're desirable, very fashionable, and they just happen to be the right thing to do. And I've always thought that's a nice approach with recycling issues, is that if we can make things beautiful and highly desirable, then just happen to be the right thing to do, then we get people to do the right things. I mean, what does the panel think about that? I remember at a TED conference in Switzerland where we were looking at electric cars, and I went outside and all of the funny, odd-looking electric vehicles with wheels sticking out the side and two people, you'd sit one behind the other and looked a bit like sort of strange motorbike. No one was hanging around, but the ones that looked like Ferraris, everybody was swamped around them. So it makes me realize that anything we do regarding circular economy and plastics has to be easy and desirable to do. I've got another question here that's just come in. In Malaysia, a lot of drinks are sold in plastic bags with straws, and we know that. I've seen lots of those in my life. And it says, can this habit be tackled? What do you think, Tahira?
It's a tough question. I think it's a Malaysian culture for us to, we call it tapau culture. So we are generally very used to do takeaways, or food takeaways and drinks as well. So if we're talking about consumer behavior, I think there needs to be some kind of systematic approach again to drive them to make this change. So I guess it's not possible by just habit alone, but there needs to be some kind of regulatory measures, a banning of unnecessary plastics, maybe like some straws, and as well as some kind of incentive to get them to change.
Well, thank you very much, Tahira. And sadly, it's time for us to close, and it falls to me to close it. I think this has been a really brilliant session because we've used the issue of plastic pollution to cross so many different elements of society and cross-disciplinary studies. And I think that the combination of your leadership in Malaysia, the fact that we're in the thick of a pandemic representing a historical opportunity, can only be good news, because we're in a situation where we must do the right thing. There doesn't seem to be any option for doing the right thing, and society globally is with us. I must say, people are aware, and we've done a great job, I think, today of capturing that in a very short space of time. And with your talent and expertise and leadership, we've told a really great story. So thank you so much for letting me join you today on this important mission. And I think we've made some good friends here, and I've had some emails. I'll be in touch with you all to follow up on our extraordinary mission. And I hope you all, keep safe and well with your families over this period. And I very much look forward to meeting you personally at one of these glorious international events that we miss so much. Thank you so much indeed, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much to the rest of the panelists. It has been quite an interesting discussion where we look into countries to countries and what are the efforts that's being done. So once again, on behalf of the edX community and also the Blue Hope community and everyone that is watching this session, we look forward to seeing you guys in person, most probably in the near future, and of course on this platform, definitely. Herewith, thank you very much, and we hope to see you soon. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. See you soon.